Hi, everyone. Well, welcome to the Sales Leadership Awakening podcast. I'm Colleen Stanley, and with me is my co-host, Stephen Rosen. Stephen, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me as your co-host.
Yes, good to see you again since I've been on vacation. So, like every podcast we conduct, our goal here with the Sales Leadership Awakening podcast is to bridge the knowing and doing gap because we live in the information age. We all know what to do, but sometimes we're not doing what we're supposed to do. So, Stephen, we have been very fortunate tonight. I have another great guest with us. I don't know how we keep these hits coming, but I'm grateful that we do. So, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Colleen. And it's my honor today to introduce Katrina Heim, Vice President of Sales of Salesforce Tableau. Thank you very much for joining us. Katrina, can you tell the audience a bit about yourself, the group that you manage, and what you're passionate about?
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Katrina Heim, and I am a regional vice president running the West for all state agencies for Tableau, which is a Salesforce company. Tableau is an analytics company. We do a ton of stuff, dashboards. We gather data and incorporate that into meaningful outputs for our customers. So that is Tableau, and the salespeople that I lead. I have a very diverse team that spans the entire West, from the Dakotas down and over, and they're great. I love my team. I have built this team. I took this team over exactly a year and a half ago as our quarter ended yesterday, and I had to do some very serious rebuilding. I have 2 veterans, and then the rest of my team is brand new. I have been very pleased with this team, and they are very diverse in ability, in what drives them as individuals, and also in the way that they achieve their success. So it's been really fun to watch.
Well, it sounds exciting. It's always fun to be able to build a team. I guess it's hard to make those tough decisions as to who stays on the team and who doesn't. But one of the questions we ask every single guest, and I'm going to ask you today, is what your leadership awakening moment was, which changed maybe how you developed your team. Can you share the awakening moment and what it means to you?
Well, my awakening moment is really twofold. Is getting into my first leadership role, which was not at Salesforce or Tableau, but in my prior company, and having to compete for that role and having to then have the person who didn't get the role report to me. And that's just been a moment. That person did resign after telling me that they would never resign, that they loved their job. It was a disappointing moment. My real awakening moment that came from that was being able to have the courage to have the tough conversations, to ask those questions nobody wants to ask. I recently had a person on my team go on a very long vacation, and I point blank asked them if they were coming back because it was an unusual request. And being able to ask people on my team the tough questions and then sit back and listen to what their answers are, that really is my awakening moment. Had I been asking the right questions to the person who had left my team at my former company, I would have been prepared for their resignation when they came back. So I would say the awakening moment has changed how I develop, how I hire, how I collaborate with my team, not being afraid to have the tough conversations. It's better to know, right? On almost everything that's going to be unpleasant, being able to have those tough conversations and ask the questions is something that I have learned to be very good at, but also that is a necessity. If you want to run a team that is collaborative, that is successful, you need to understand where each one of those team members sits. So having those discussions was really my awakening moment.
That's a very powerful awakening moment because many leaders fear having those difficult conversations. I think it's 2/3 of people will do anything to avoid having difficult conversations. So obviously that moment has changed you. What do you do when you go into a difficult conversation? What do you tell yourself? Because I guess if we perceive it as difficult, then it will be difficult. But what's your sort of psyche in terms of going in to have a conversation, and how do you overcome any fear you might have?
It's funny, one of my colleagues at this former company, which was Dell, said, Katrina, it's interesting. When the building is burning down, you're the one who's running into it. You're not afraid to ask or say anything. I don't know how you got to be this way. Everyone else is running away from that horrible conversation or that situation towards it. And I think what happens is that I just get to the point, I don't even psych myself up for it. I see the problem and I address the problem. Because at the end of the day, wouldn't you rather have that information, whether it's somebody resigning, whether your child is doing something that you don't want them to do, whether you have cancer in your body? Wouldn't you rather know earlier so that you can get the situation resolved quicker and hopefully with less fuss? So I just got to the point where I don't even really think about it that hard anymore. I go in, I say, this person has not done this, and I've asked you to do this several times. So how can I get this resolved? What can I do to help you get these things done? What can I do to help you? A lot of sales leaders, their biggest frustration in life is getting their reps to update Salesforce. When I was at Dell, my poor boss, Brad Schwartz, who I still keep in touch with and adore, he would call me on a Saturday. He'd be like, really? And I was doing great. I was winning President's Club. I was doing all these things. And he was just like, hey, I'm going to call you on Saturdays until you get this done. And of course, I'm going to answer on a Saturday because he's my boss. So I just got to the point where you see what you need to have done. You have your list of things that need to get done all the time, whether it's hiring, whether it's selling, whether it's admin work. And if people are having a struggle on that, you have to ask those tough questions. You can't just say, I need you to do this. You have to ask them those hard questions. Is there a reason that you can't do this? Okay, then let's have that conversation. How are you feeling in this role? Do you feel this is the right role for you? Because my job as a sales leader is to move my reps either up or out. It's very rare that you find a salesperson who wants to stay in that job forever. Now, there are people who do, who just make money year over year. They have a lot of other stuff going on in their life. They don't care. They don't want to rise up in corporate America. That's not everyone's dream. But for a lot of reps, they need to either get moved up or out. And my job is to help them do that, whether it's getting a new role within my company or whether it's helping them develop a skill set. I had an AE at Dell who really wanted the role that I had. It was 2 years. He had interviewed for it. He called me when he interviewed for it and said, I'm going to interview for this. I know I'm never going to get it. And I was like, first of all, let's take a step back. You probably are. You have a chance. Everyone has a chance, right? But he didn't get it. But what we did over the next 2 years, because we asked those tough questions and because we had the tough discussions of here's the gap of you want to be here, you need to get this part done. And you need to be able to evangelize yourself to leadership. So we went through and we worked on those things. And when I left Dell to come to Salesforce, he was the easy choice to be my backfill. But if he hadn't had the courage to come to me and say, I'm going to interview against you for this, help me, like, what do you think my pitch should be? I would have never known that. And if I hadn't said when I got into that role, hey, are you still interested in having this job? Yes, I am. Great. Let's make you super successful over the next few years. Let's make sure that you have every single quality that they're going to be looking for when I leave.
Good for you. You mentioned having the courage, but I also think you did something really well as a leader to make the environment safe enough to have the courage, right? So there was two things going on there from what I see is that, yes, he was courageous, but you've also created that environment. And what's interesting about having tough conversations, it actually builds trust. And I'm preaching to the choir here because if they know where you stand, they can trust you. They don't have to agree with it, but they're not guessing what's your position on something. So kudos to you for that. Something else you mentioned a couple of times is how important collaboration is for you in building this great team. For me, that falls under the realm of soft skills, interpersonal skills. So this all sounds good. How have you actually vetted though for these soft skills? Because hard skills are a little easier to vet for. You can see the resume and quota attained year over year. Do you have an interview question? Is it a gut feel? because I think everybody who afford absolutely needs these collaborative sales teams. It's happening too fast. You can't go it alone anymore.
That's right. So now we're getting back to regular world after 2 years of not being able to travel and to meet. I've had to make hires over Zoom calls, which is very uncomfortable for me. I hire on character, collaboration, and the ability to do the role. So for me, culture on my team is key. And that's what I protect the most. I interview somebody who has blown out their number 1,000,000 times. And if they are not going to be a fit for my team, for the personalities on my team, they will not be hired on my team. And the reason for that is that, especially when you're running a geographically diverse team, which I always have, you have to have that collaboration. It has to be an easy fit within the team. Every company has a process, but I also add, and I look for this, especially this question when I'm hiring, is I look for the question, can I talk to other people who are on your team? I ask this question myself. And if they don't ask that, then I set it up for them. Because at Salesforce, you have the first meeting, then you have the panel discussion, whatever, whether it's a group or you talk to several people, then you talk to the leadership. But in between that, and we do try to keep things streamlined, but I want people who are going to come to my team to talk to the AEs who they will be working with and collaborating with on a daily or weekly basis. One of my old bosses at Dell, Dave, would say, don't hire weirdos. And I always said, because I still have New Mexico or Montana, if I don't want to get into a car and drive from Santa Fe to Albuquerque with someone, I'm not hiring them. I'm not hiring them if it's going to be weird or awkward or whatever. But it's even more important because I can vet that out pretty quickly. I've been on the dating circuit a long time. I can vet that out. Someday I'm going to write a book about sales and dating and become a billionaire. But if I have a candidate who interviews or who talks to, it's not even an interview, it's just a conversation with two of the people who report to me directly, and those people have feedback, they're probably not going to get hired. It is so important when you're onboarding. I don't have the time in my day to onboard somebody from cradle to grave. We rely on collaboration and for my team to have the leadership to mentor the newer members of the team. So if somebody really connects in the interview process with one of the AEs, then that's a natural fit for them to be mentored by that person. We call it a trail guide at Salesforce. So having those extra interviews and having my AEs ask them questions and just get a feel for them is a really good test on that cooperation.
So, Katrina, I'm curious because I'm sure you've heard this, Stephen, I bet you have too. This myth, I'm going to call it the myth, is that good sales professionals, high producers are just lone rangers, hard to manage, jerks. And then the company accepts it. So, what is the reason that some sales leaders will just accept bad behavior because a person is producing? And I don't know if you've got any perspective on that, but it drives me crazy because when I managed a team, I was like, I'm not managing a jerk. I'm the same philosophy as you. I will recruit my brains out to get rid of a jerk. So where do you think this myth came from, or why does it persist, or does it persist?
It's about making numbers. Somebody who is a top performer who is not a collaborator, it's really about working with that person and having those tough conversations. But I think that in today's world, where whether you're at any of these technology companies, there's so many products to sell that you are at a point where you don't have a choice but to collaborate. And so I think that we are getting to a stage in the world where if you're not collaborating, you might be successful this year and maybe next year. But as new products come out, as higher threats to security, and you have to have your ducks in a row when you're selling, you're not going to be successful.
What I have found is the lone wolf survives in an environment of startup of where what you need to get the sales, it doesn't matter how you get them, just go out and get the sales. As companies grow and evolve, then other factors like how do you get the sale? How do you work with the team? So your values and behaviors become important in larger organizations because, hey, we've got many products, we've got many people. How our people interact is important. So the lone wolf can survive in much more of a startup environment, but then struggles in a corporate environment that has grown. But it's interesting what you mentioned in terms of growth and making it 1 year, maybe the second year, but not the third year. So if you can share a little bit about how consistency has been a key to your success as a leader.
Well, I just had the meeting with my boss's boss, and we were talking about this because we were talking about having a new team and making sure consistency is key for long-term success. And that means whether you recruiting the best talent and retaining that talent. It really goes back to asking those tough questions and having those conversations, making sure your team is happy, making sure you're helping them be successful and that they see a path to success. So for me, I'm thrilled right now with my team. I'm so excited about what's to come on this team because we have the right players in seat. It's been a lot to get those there, but having that consistency, in my opinion, the single biggest success factor in sales, making sure that you have the right people in seat and that they're staying in seat. When people are leaving and you hear rumors, right? It's all about the rumors and the perception, like, oh, everybody's leaving this company. Okay, really, is everybody leaving? Probably not, because they're still in business. But it's really about having a consistent team because that allows you to develop your team. That allows you to grow your team. And we talked about my job is to move my team up or out. Sometimes that means getting my team, maybe somebody wants to change territory. Maybe they want to take on more of a leadership role within the team before they take on a leadership role or go after leadership roles that are more formal. And so having that consistency allows us to be successful. It also allows us, I think, as salespeople, I started in sales here and in Europe. I was bouncing around, successful, but it's like, oh, shiny object, and here we go. And that really helped me as a leader. And I am the first person in line. I told Brian this morning, oh, pitch contests and forecast calls, all these things that are not that fun. The biggest thing about consistency, besides having my consistent team that has helped me, is having consistency and making myself be disciplined on things like forecast calls. On things my team knows, we have a forecast call every Tuesday afternoon because my big forecast calls are Wednesday and Thursday. They know if I go into Salesforce and all of our stuff that I need for my call is not updated, we have the Tuesday afternoon call. It's not fun for any of us. If everything's updated, I cancel the call and everybody loves that.
You hold people accountable. I was going to say you were too fast, but you know what? Good for you. And that's about setting expectations and following through on them.
Absolutely. Because I know what is expected of me. There is no question. And I cannot go into a call where I am expected to give information and not be prepared. I always tell my AEs this. If you are not giving me the information and it is not in the app, we call Salesforce the app at Salesforce. If it's not in the app, I can't protect you. Or I have to make up a story and then we have to make that story come true. And that is very difficult. So having that, it allows me to have less mini panic attacks at work. It also allows us to relax because we know we have our ducks in order. We have our business down. We have that consistency and the discipline that allows us to then have more fun than being successful. And not stressing at your job in the work arena. I want my team to have fun. I want them to like their jobs. So when we have these little measures in place that help us to stay consistent, then we can all go out and do what we want to do.
Consistency with your team, consistency with yourself in terms of expectations and follow through. leads to consistency with sales.
It does. And nothing is more fun than making money and selling and having excitement of bringing in these large opportunities, or bringing in, even if it's not large, something that's really satisfying, I guess the word would be, in being in public sector. Because people are always like, ooh, public sector. The feeling that whether it's with a child welfare system or going in and making sure that the constituents of our customers are being served the best they can with the resources available, that is immensely satisfying. I know it's satisfying. I've been in all aspects of sales. I've sold to everything from telcos to big corporations to public sector to startups. And it's very satisfying knowing that the work that we're doing today directly affects those vulnerable populations in the territories that we have. I love having fun, and I also love the good feeling that comes from knowing that the systems that we're putting into place now are building better lives for those who are very vulnerable.
It's a great purpose.
And isn't that interesting? Because all the wonderful technology that your company's known for, it's been proven over and over again, purpose-driven lives create better lives. Now, this is kind of switching gears because you are a tech company. So this is interesting with the very purpose-driven, the character, the consistency. I'm loving all of it. I know our listeners will be wondering, how is Salesforce, who's always been the leader in technology, leveraging AI? Because I was just reading an article in the paper yesterday that now people are starting to wonder, was there too much buzz around it? I'm sure that conversation is going to go on forever. But as a leader, how have you specifically been able to leverage AI to lead and manage your team better? Your state of the sales came out, and this was more on the salespeople. And the stat here I've got in Salesforce, 70% are on non-selling tasks, 70% of their time. I'm guessing AI leverage can get rid of that nonsense waster for leaders as well.
My answer in short is yes, we do use AI. As a sales leader, one of the best things that we use AI for, looking at things like pipeline, looking at things like what are the trends compared to last year, and then looking in the future, how are we doing as a team on different metrics? Having all of that on our phones, I just go in, I get a Slack notification, and I can get weekly reports on how is my team doing, comparatively speaking, where I don't have to go into any tools and look up the data from last year and figure this out. Everything is being put together. So I think we'll continue to see that. We'll continue to see AI also when we talk about public sector and limited resources. As a caseworker, I can go in on phone, bring up the app and say, gosh, you know what? I have these 20, 30 people I need to see today to do welfare checks based on these 10 data points. Who are the neediest? Helping use resources better, helping to prioritize. I think we'll see that. AI is definitely here to stay. Think about all the trends in technology. Let's pick one that's really easy, cell phones. When I was growing up, I called my friend on my landline and I told her I was going to be at this corner at this time, and we'd get on our bikes and we would go and meet. Now our kids, they're changing plans and doing things, and they have so much information at their fingertips. When we were young, we went to the library. Remember, we pulled out those long drawers and looked at the books, and my kids are doing PowerPoints for their book reports. So I think AI is just another one of these. It's a very exciting time to be in technology. We're at the beginning of this, and to be able to even just start using it, to whether it's tracking or getting information and getting better information, better decisions.
So that's always my curiosity point. With data analytics, do you believe with AI, it simply gives you the answer? Or as a leader, do you still need to possess that quality on what is the data telling me? Because I've seen people that get a lot of data and they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what the data is saying. I'd be curious on your perspective there.
I would say almost 90% of problems as a sales leader are people problems. You can have all the data, AI can spit it out for you and tell you what to say. But the one thing that AI can't do is AI cannot replace, at this time, the human factor. I can have all the data. I can look at the trends. I can look at how many calls these reps are making. I can look at every single thing. I can have it in a beautiful dashboard. But if I don't have the human factor of me going in and saying, Colleen, I'm seeing your data here. I'm seeing your sales trending is going down. I'm seeing your pipeline is going down. I can say, what's going on? It's a people problem. I'm getting a divorce. I have a new baby at home. I'm not getting sleep. My parents are aging and I'm taking care of. A lot of times the stuff that is going on in the workplace, a lot of times has nothing to do with the workplace. And so having that human factor, and also the human factor of what is motivating you. I'm saying you didn't do your 10 calls or whatever the performance indicator is. And you're like, you know what? I hate cold calling, or I don't like this job. Then I understand no way AI is going to tell me you're not doing your job. But it's really more so, in my opinion, about the why. What is going on? And maybe it's not the right fit of a job, or maybe it's not the right territory, or maybe you need some help and motivation and inspiration. Like, hey, you know what? Let's go have some fun. Let's go on some calls together. Let's do this. Let's see how things are going. In my opinion, again, no AI or any technology is ever going to be able to overcome that.
Well, as somebody that teaches emotional intelligence skills, that's music to my ears. So I did not expect that answer. So thank you for that. I'm absolutely 100% agreement there. It's the live conversations, and maybe at some point we'll have a robot that's just as empathetic and other aware, but I think that's down the road. So Stephen, obviously we're blessed again with another great guest here. I'd love to hear your takeaways. I know I've got 5 of them spinning in my head, but what's 1 or 2 that you're taking?
Well, I actually like to share with our audience and Katrina for sure. I work with sales leaders and help them become what I feel are great sales leaders. And there's a couple of things that you've demonstrated, which I think aligns with great sales leadership. So I'm going to take 2. Number 1, just going back to the beginning, having difficult conversations. I use psychometric profiles to help companies hire. When we hire sales leaders, there's 2 things I look at. And one of them is, are they comfortable having difficult conversations? And our assessments actually can pick that up. To me, that is a critical success factor for sales leaders. So folks who are listening out there, we train sales managers on how to have difficult conversations, and there's a 5-step formula. Becoming comfortable with those makes you a far better leader. So kudos to you. However, if it was your awakening moment, the fact that you're comfortable having those, to me, is a sign of a great leader. The other thing you talked about, which aligns very much with stuff that I teach, is expecting your reps to come prepared. And that is a paradigm shift for managers. As you said, if you're speaking to your boss's boss, you don't just show up and say, well, can you tell me what's going on in my business? You come prepared with an agenda of what you want to talk about and some data. So when I work with managers, I always ask them, who comes prepared for this? And many say, well, I usually will look through the numbers before. But my pat answer, and I think you've hit upon that, is, are your salespeople high-paid professionals? Or, not to pick on people who work flipping burgers, because I did that once upon a time, or are they burger flippers? And everyone says, well, they're high-paid professionals. I said, you're a high-paid professional. So if you don't come prepared to meetings, you're not going to be in your role. So to me, it's incumbent, and kudos to you, because I'm just repeating what you said, but that's one of my takeaways to share with the audience, that the expectation that your reps come prepared as whatever you want to call it, an admission ticket to be in a meeting, or admission ticket to meet with you, to me is a sign of great leadership. So it's been a great discussion. Thank you, Colleen. What are your takeaways?
Oh, well, there's so many, but I really love your point, Katrina, and your modeling, and also walking the talk on collaboration and culture, because I had the good fortune to start in a small company that now today is the largest in the world in their industry. However, in those startup years, you needed people like yourself. I would be calling Betty and Lynette. I'd be calling Patty, because I didn't know what I was doing. And if we did not have people that were collaborative, willing to help out young sales professionals that didn't know what the heck they were doing, I suspect this company wouldn't have grown to the size they did. So I am all about your message on collaboration and culture. I absolutely think it's key to growth. So thank you for just so many great messages today. Very, very powerful.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So as we wrap up another insightful episode, there's been lots of insights today on the Sales Leadership Awakening podcast. I hope you can walk away with 1 or 2 strategies that will help you bridge that gap between knowing what to do, knowing that it's important to have difficult conversations, and actually doing them. So thank you once again.
Thanks, Katrina.
Thank you.